If I Were a Man by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. If I were a man, that was what pretty little Molly Matthewson always said when Gerald would not do what she wanted him to, which was seldom. That was what she said this bright morning, with the stamp of a little high heeled slipper, just because he had made a fuss about that bill, the long one with the account rendered, which she had forgotten to give him the first time and been afraid to the second, and now he had taken it from the postman himself. Molly was true to type. She was a beautiful instance of what is reverentially called a true woman. Little, of course. No true woman may be big. Pretty, of course. No true woman could possibly be plain. Whimsical, capricious, charming, changeable, devoted to pretty clothes and always wearing them well, as the esoteric phrase has it. This does not refer to the clothes, they do not wear well in the least, but to some special grace of putting them on and carrying them about, granted to but few, it appears. She was also a loving wife and a devoted mother, possessed of the social gift and the love of society that goes with it, and with all these was fond and proud of her home and managed it as capably as well as most women do. If there ever was a true woman, it was Molly Matthewson, and yet she was wishing heart and soul she was a man. And all of a sudden she was. She was Gerald, walking down the path so erect and square shouldered, in a hurry for his morning train, as usual, and it must be confessed in something of a temper. Her own words were ringing in her ears. Not only the last word, but several that had gone before, and she was holding her lips tight shut, not to say something she would be sorry for, but instead of acquiescence in the position taken by that angry little figure on the veranda. What she felt was a sort of superior pride, a sympathy as with weakness, a feeling that I must be gentle with her in spite of the temper. A man, really a man, with only enough subconscious memory of herself remaining to make her recognize of the differences. At first, there was a funny sense of size and weight, an extra thickness. The feet and hands seemed strangely large, and her long, straight, free legs swung forward as a gait that made her feel as if on stilts. This presently passed, and in its place, growing all day, wherever she went, came a new and delightful feeling of being the right size. Everything fitted now. Her back snugly against the seat back, her feet comfortably on the floor. Her feet! His feet. She studied them carefully. Never before since her early school days had she felt some freedom and comfort as to feet. They were firm and solid on the ground when she walked, quick, springy, safe as when, moved by an unrecognizable impulse, she had run after, caught, and swung aboard the car. Another impulse fished in a convenient pocket for a change instantly, automatically, bringing forth a nickel for the conductor and a penny for the newsboy. These pockets came as a revelation. Of course, she had known they were there. She had counted them, made fun of them, mended them, and even envied them, but never had dreamed of how it felt to have pockets. Behind her newspaper, she let her consciousness, the odd mingled consciousness, rove from pocket to pocket, realizing the armored assurance of having all these things at hand, instantly get at able, ready to meet emergencies. The cigar case gave her a warm feeling of comfort. It was full. The firmly held fountain pen, safe unless she stood on her head, the keys, pencils, letters, documents, notebook, checkbook, bill folder, all at once, with a deep rushing sense of power and pride. She felt what she had never felt before in all her life, the possession of money, of her own earned money, hers to give or to withhold, not to beg for, tease for, whittle for, hers. That bill, why? If it had come to her, to him, that is, he would have paid it as a matter of course, and never mentioned it to her. Then, being he, sitting there so easily and firmly with his money in his pockets, she wakened to his lifelong consciousness about money. Boyhood, its desires and dreams and ambitions. Young manhood working tremendously for the wherewithal to making a home for her. The present years with all their net of care and hopes, and dangers, the present moment, when he needed every cent for a special plans of great importance, and this bill, long overdue and demanding payment, meant an amount of inconvenience, wholly unnecessary, if it had been given to him when it first came. Also, the man's keen dislike for that account rendered. Women have no business sense, she found herself saying, and all that money just for hats, idiotic, useless, ugly things. With that, she began to see hats of the women in the car, as she had never seen hats before. The men seemed normal, dignified, becoming, with enough variety for personal taste and with distinction in style and in age, such as she had never noticed before. But for the women's, with the eye of a man and the brain of a man, with the memory of a whole lifetime of free actions wherein the hat close fitted on cropped hair had been no handicap, she now perceived the hats of women. The massed fluffed hair was at once attractive and foolish, and on that hair, at every angle, in all colors, tipped, twisted, tortured into every crooked shape, made of any substance chance might offer, perched these formless objects. Then, on their formlessness, the trimmings, these squirts of stiff feather, these violent outstanding bows of glistening ribbon, these swaying projecting masses of plumage which tormented the faces of bystanders. Never in all her life had she imagined that these idealized millinery could look to those who paid for it like the decorations of an insane monkey. And yet, when there came into the car a little woman, as foolish as any, but pretty and sweet looking, up rose Gerald Mathewson and gave her his seat. And later, when there came in a handsome red cheeked girl, whose hat was wilder and more violent in color and eccentric in shape than any other, when she stood nearby and her soft curling plumes swept his cheek once and again, he felt a sense of sudden pleasure at the intimate tickling touch, and she, deep down within, felt such a wave of shame as might well drown 1,000 hats forever. When he took his train, his seat in the smoking car, she had a new surprise. All about him were the other men, commuters too, and many of them friends of his. To her, they would have been distinguished as Mary Wade's husband, the man Belle Grant is engaged to, that rich Mr. Shopworth, or that pleasant Mr. Beale, and they all would have lifted their hats to her, bowed, and made polite conversations if near enough, especially Mr. Beale. Now came the feeling of open-eyed acquaintance, of knowing men as they were. The mere amount of this knowledge was a surprise to her. The whole background of talk from boyhood up, the gossip of barber shop and club, the conversation of morning and evening hours on the trains, the knowledge of political affiliations, of business standings and prospects, of character, in a light she had never known before. They came and talked to Gerald, one and another. He seemed quite popular. As they talked, with this new memory and new understanding, an understanding which seemed to include all these men's mind, there poured in on the submerged consciousness beneath a new and a startling knowledge what men really think of women. Good average American men were there, married men for the most part, and happy, as happiness goes in general. In the minds of each and all, there seemed to be a two-story department, quite apart from the rest of their ideas, a separate place where they kept their thoughts and feelings about women. In the upper half were the tenderest emotions, the most exquisite ideals, the sweetest memories, all lovely sentiments as to home and mother, all delicate, admiring adjectives, a sort of sanctuary where a veiled statue, blindly adored, shared place with beloved yet commonplace experiences. In the lower half, here that buried consciousness woke to keen distress. They kept quite another assortment of ideas. Here, even in this clean-minded husband of hers, was the memory of stories told at men's dinners, of worse ones overheard in car or street, of base traditions, coarse epithets, gross experiences, known, though not shared. And all these in the department woman, while in the rest of the mind, here was new knowledge indeed. The world opened before her, not the world she had been reared in, where home had covered all the map, almost, and the rest had been foreign or unexplored country, but the world as it was, man's world, as made, lived in, and seen by men. It was dizzying, To see the houses that fled so fast across the car window in terms of builders' bills or of some technical insight into materials and methods, to see a passing village with lamentable knowledge of who owned it and how its boss was rapidly aspiring in state power, or how that kind of paving was a failure. To see shops not as mere exhibition of desirable objects but as business ventures, many mere sinking ships, some promising a profitable voyage. This new world bewildered her. She, as Gerald, had already forgotten about that bill, over which she, as Molly, was still crying at home. Gerald was talking business with this man, talking politics with that, and now sympathizing with the carefully withheld troubles of a neighbor. Molly had always sympathized with the neighbor's wife before. She began to struggle violently with this large, dominant masculine consciousness. She remembered with sudden clearness things she had read, lectures she had heard, and resented with increasing intensity this serene masculine preoccupation with the male point of view. Mr. Miles, the little fussy man who lived on the other side of the street, was talking now. He had a large, complacent wife. Molly had never really liked her much, but had always thought him rather nice. He was so punctilious in small courtesies. And here he was talking to Gerald. Such talk. Had to come in here. Gave my seat to a dame who was bound to have it. There's nothing they won't get when they make up their minds to it, eh? No fear, said the big man in the next seat. They haven't much mind to make up, you know. And if they do, they'll change it. The real danger, began Reverend Alfred Smith, the new Episcopal clergyman, a thin, nervous man with a face several centuries behind the times, is that they will overstep the limits of their God appointed sphere. Their natural limits ought to hold them, I think, said cheerfully Dr. Jones. You can't get around physiology, I tell you. I have never seen any limits myself, not to what they want, anyhow. Mr. Miles, merely a rich husband and a fine house and no end of bonnets and dresses and the latest thing in motors and a few diamonds and so on, keeps us pretty busy. There was a grey, tired man across the aisle. He had a very nice wife, always beautifully dressed, and 3 unmarried daughters, also beautifully dressed. Mary knew them. She knew he worked hard too. She looked at him now, a little anxiously, but he smiled cheerfully. Do you good, Miles, he said. What else would a man work for? A good woman is about the best thing on earth, and a bad one's the worst, that's sure, responded Miles. She's a pretty weak sister, viewed professionally, Dr. Jones averred with solemnity, and Reverend Alfred Smith added, she brought evil into the world. Gerald Mathewson sat up straight. Something was stirring in him which he did not recognize, yet could not resist. Seems to me we all talk like Noah, he suggested dryly, or the ancient Hindu scriptures. Women have their limitations, but so do we, God knows. Haven't we known girls in schools and colleges just as smart as we were? We cannot play our games, coldly replied the clergyman. Gerald measured his meagre propositions with a practiced eye. I never was particularly good at football myself, he modestly admitted. But I have known women who could outlast a man in all-round endurance. Besides, life isn't spent in athletics. This sadly was true. They all looked down the aisle, where a heavily ill-dressed man with a bad complexion sat alone. He had held the top of the columns once with the headlines and photographs. Now he earned less than any of them. It's time we woke up, pursued Gerald, still inwardly urged to unfamiliar speech. Women are pretty much people, seems to me. I know they dress like fools, but who would blame them for it? We invented all these idiotic hats of theirs and designed their crazy fashions. And what's more, if a woman is courageous enough to wear common sense clothes and shoes, which of us wants to dance with her? Yes, we blame them for grafting on us. But are we willing to let our wives work? We are not. It hurts our pride, that's all. We are always criticizing them for making mercenary marriages. But what do we call a girl who marries a chump with no money? Just a poor fool. That's it. And they know it. As for Mother Eve, I wasn't there and can't deny the story. But I will say this. If she brought evil into the world, we men have had the lion's share of keeping it going ever since. How about that? They drew into the city and all day long in his business. Gerald was vaguely conscious of new views, strange feelings, and the submerged Molly learned and learned.